one of the things we were going to talk about today is different philosophies, and two very competing philosophies are one where in the classroom, do I ever use the student's native language, or do I only use what we call in the language world the L2, the target language? I've met a lot of different people with a lot of different ideas, met a lot of teachers with a lot of different ideas. As a learner, I'm not concerned about what the teacher thinks is a good idea. As a learner, I'm just concerned about what I think is a good idea.
Yeah.
How, I mean, for you, when you were going through this process, maybe from the age of 11 with your uncle, all the way up to when you finished the university, what did you experience regarding that? Did you experience classes that were strictly one way or classes that were another way? Was it all one particular way?
Well, yeah, I remember that when I was with my uncle in this course I was talking about, my uncle used to use Spanish, but also English for certain instructions. He was like saying just like certain words so we could pay attention.
Yeah.
Basically that, pay attention over here, listen, okay, or talk. And he used to use also his hands,
Yeah.
some body language so we could understand what he was saying.
Right.
But he used Spanish as well. And I remember that a lot. I remember that at the time he used to use the tape recorder. It was not even a CD player at the time.
We're all old enough. We remember those days.
Yeah. And he was like, okay, pay attention and listen. And I remember those words from those days. And then when I started a secundaria, I was, the next year, basically, I was 12 years old and I started secundaria. I had a teacher that was, in my opinion now that I see it, she was a very good teacher. She was very strict, one of those teachers that, times have changed.
Okay.
Nowadays, teachers are not that strict, but she was just mean in some ways. She used physical punishment. She caned the students. Thankfully, I was...
See how effective it is? It's effective. Yeah.
Well, but I remember that she spoke Spanish the whole class.
Okay.
The whole class. And the only English that we used as students was, good morning, class. Good morning, teacher. How are you? Fine, thanks. And you? I'm fine. Sit down. Thanks. That was it.
Did she know English, or do you know if she knew English?
According to what she told me at the time, she did know English. The problem was that, and I understand that now that I am a teacher, that in a room with 35 kids, and in which, most of us had different backgrounds, she had to use Spanish just to make her class faster.
Yeah.
But she was a good teacher, in my opinion. I learned a lot from her. Okay. But the problem in there is that, we basically used L1. And I don't know if you have talked about this, but I also learned with grammar translation. I mean, I basically grew up with that in my life.
What do you mean when you say grammar translation? Because in my experience, I've run across so many definitions of what that is. I think I could say that if 5 people are talking about grammar translation at the same time, it's very easy to perceive that in each of their heads, they have a different idea of what that is.
Oh, right. Look,
all of them are valid ideas, but yeah.
In that case, I mean that basically she explained something in English, and she gave us I wanted to find a very nice word for it, but it's like the equivalence, let's say, in Spanish. Because she also used to say that languages are different.
Yeah.
We have equivalences, like, this is like the equivalent to these. She used to teach in that way.
So what does she say? Like, okay, students, open your books. Abran los libros.
Well, not in that way, but I'm talking more. She was more focused to grammar. For example, presente perfecto. I remember that way. She was like, okay, presente perfecto. I have studied English equals he estudiado inglés.
Ah, okay. Now I
have es un auxiliar como haber.
Yeah.
pasado participio, hado, ido, toso, cho en español.
Okay.
And you know, those words or the way that she taught just stuck in my mind. It's stuck in my mind. And
yeah.
And basically I learned in that way.
Well,
most of my life. Yeah.
That's interesting that you mentioned that. Well, I'm a big believer in that way of teaching. I started with that way of teaching, and over the history of the 13, 14 years I've been teaching, I've been through the whole pinball machine of points and perspectives about how to look at that and if that's good or that's bad or who that works for and who that doesn't work for and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But I started off with that idea of teaching. And like I say, I've run into a lot of people who it works for, and I've run into a lot of people who it doesn't seem to work for, which validates arguments against that form of teaching. But it's interesting to know that for you, it was very helpful. I think for people that are very analytic about how a language works, and if they stop to think about how their own language works, mm-hmm. I think seeing that kind of presentation is very helpful. If you have students that are not even interested in reflecting on how their own language works, I think it just kind of goes in one side of the head and right out the other. For some students, for me as a learner, seeing presentations like that was very helpful.
A couple of years ago, I was talking to a principal. I used to work with her, and we were talking about the way in which we learn English. And she told me that, her learning was, let's say, very natural. She acquired the language rather than really. Yeah, she told me that.
Yeah.
And I told her that for me was quite the opposite. And I remember I told her, or I told her about this anecdote that I told you now.
Yeah.
That for me it was like that when the teacher presented a topic, like it really stuck in my mind, like the same with present continuous, like I am running, estoy jugando. And I got like that, and I learned in that way. For me, it was really helpful. Yeah. And you're right, and now that I am, later on as a teacher, present perfect, past perfect, the perfect tenses, I believe they are some of the most difficult topics for students, because sometimes they don't grasp the idea or they don't understand how to use it. And for me, it was always
starts with just calling it perfect.
Yeah. And for me, it was
perfect, really, that completely throws everybody's idea out of what is that? The brain just doesn't even bother with that word. It sees that word and it just kind of tries to find a place for it. And okay, I'll set you here for right now. Perfect, whatever that's supposed to mean. And you just kind of keep going, and later, stupid grammar terms.